Decalogue 3 concerns the commandment, "Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy." Decalogue 3, to me at least, is simpler than 1 and 2. I don't think it's inferior, though. It starts off with drunken singing, and then we see Janusz, a taxi driver, putting on a Santa costume in his car before walking to the famous apartment building. As he approaches the door to the building, he runs into Krzysztof, the father from Decalogue 1. In what I think is one of the best shots in the episode, the camera switches perspectives during the interaction, from Janusz's to Krzysztof's. We know this because the camera stays outside with Krzysztof, and we follow him in a panning shot where he observes Janusz through the window, surprising his happy family in the apartment. This callback to episode 1 is great. We see people celebrating a happy, joyful Christmas with their family through the eyes of a man who just lost his son. He's looking through a window into a life he cannot have. There's a physical separation. Speaking of which, the cinematographer Piotr Sobocinski really loves shooting through windows, as these sort of shots recur throughout the episode. So the first couple shots tell us all we need to know going into this episode. We know that Janusz is a taxi driver, so we can expect that much of the episode is to be set in his car. We also know it's Christmas, and that he cherishes the holiday, as he's obviously gone above and beyond for his family. But, aside from just basic information, the first few shots set up the theme and story for the film. Janusz's seemingly happy family life pains someone who is suffering and lonely. Eva, the co-protagonist, views Janusz in this light. But whereas Janusz had nothing to do with Pavel's death, Janusz has much to do with Eva's current situation. In one of the first scenes with Eva, her aunt holds her head and asks her if she's done her homework. Eva plays along with her aunt, but we see the pain in her eyes. Watching a family member succumb to dementia or Alzheimer's is devastating, and Kieślowski shows this in close-ups. And really, it feels like this is a normal part of her life, and is probably adding to her isolation. After her aunt dozes off, Eva leaves and attends the midnight mass, where we first learn of her relationship with Janusz. Their first interaction is wordless, but tells us everything we need to know. Janusz glances back and spots Eva. He tries to act like he doesn't see her at first, but he looks back again. She notices his gaze and tries to hide from him. There's a history here, and it's not a pretty one. In fact, given the setup of Janusz with his family, the scene tells us, without telling us, that Eva is a past lover of Janusz. Whether or not the love was adulterous, we don't know at this point, but we can gather that it probably was. After Christmas Mass, Eva interrupts Janusz's celebration with his family in his home. She calls up to his apartment and asks to talk to him in the parking lot. So to his wife, he makes up a BS story about a shady character hanging around his car. His wife knows it's BS, we know it's BS. He's not fooling anyone. She convinces Janusz that her husband has gone missing, and she needs his help to find him. She takes him on this wild goose chase through Warsaw in search of her husband. During this nighttime odyssey, their tumultuous past unveils itself to us. You know, the thing about having characters in cars is that it forces them to interact with each other. Even if they don't talk, their silence still tells us something. But often they talk candidly, as they're in their own little private space. So, as they do, they end up contemplating suicide and they test fate. First, they speed past cops. They get pulled over, but the police let them off easy. Then, right after, Janusz drives into an oncoming train. The train driven by Archibald Kish. Janusz pulls away at the last second. Now is not their time to die. What I find darkly comedic about this scene is that Janusz tells Eva to put her seatbelt on right after they decide to crash into the train. She says no, of course. A seatbelt can't protect you from assured death. This plays into Kieślowski's theme of fate perfectly. There are a couple ways that you can see it. If they're fated to crash, the seatbelt might only give her some comfort, but it won't do anything to stop her death. But if they're not fated to crash into the train, the fact that she is or is not wearing a seatbelt has no bearing on it. In this case, her fate rests in Janusz's free will. He chooses life in the end, and they both live, no thanks to their seatbelts. Although, as a side note, seatbelts do save lives, so be sure to wear them when driving. To contrast this scene is a scene where Eva takes the wheel from Janusz and steers the car into a Christmas tree. The collision is a soft one, and though the tree falls on the car, the damage consists only of some scratches and a busted headlight. What does it say about their relationship? My interpretation is that the scene reflects their affair. We learn that their affair ended 3 years prior to the episode. We don't know how long it lasted, or any of the details really. Just that 3 years ago, someone supposedly called Eva's husband and told him about it, causing him to walk in on them during the act of sex, and issue an ultimatum to Eva, to choose between him or Janusz. Eva chose her husband. But what's gone on since? Janusz returned to his family, and so did Eva. Or did she? When we get to Eva's home, it doesn't look like a place lived in by a family. Eva dresses the bathroom with men's shaving equipment, but Janusz tests the blade. It's rusty and dull. He asks Eva if her husband grew a beard, and she immediately says no. At this point, we all know, Janusz included, that her husband is not in the picture. But, to add to that, the car that supposedly her husband drove, which we saw her driving earlier, remains parked where she parked it, but she claims it as her husband's. Now, we too know this not true. And Janusz does too, but for different reasons. There was big snow that afternoon. If her husband went missing at noon, the car should be covered in snow. It's not. And he calls her out on it. It's not until 7:03 a.m. that Eva confesses the truth. Her husband left her 3 years ago to start a new family. She presents a photo of her ex-husband and his family to Janusz. If she spent Christmas Eve night with Janusz, and he stuck around with her until 7 a.m., she felt that everything would be all right. Now, we fully see the impact of the affair on both of their lives. She lost her family, and not much changed for him. I like to think that she made the anonymous phone call to her husband, because it'd work well poetically. She took the steering wheel and tried to destroy Janusz and herself, but he escaped with only a few scratches. In the final scene, after Eva and Janusz go their separate ways Christmas morning, Janusz returns to his wife. She's asleep on the couch, implying that she waited up for him. She knows he spent the night with Eva, but he assures her that it's over. She doesn't act envious or enraged, but she does appear to forgive him, mirroring the end of Dekalog 2. It's funny, while Dekalog 2 focused on a woman with 2 male lovers, Dekalog 3 follows a man with 2 female lovers. Well, to be fair, a wife and an ex-lover. I still like how the stories mirror each other. It's possibly one of the most depressing Christmas films that you can watch. But the aesthetics are nice.